Lauren Leswing. I work for the Bureau of Student Wellness at the New Hampshire Department of Education. It's good to see everyone for our morning coffee chat. I hope you all have your coffee or your morning beverage of choice. Today we're going to be talking about a few resources for how to show solidarity with families who may be experiencing more vulnerability during this pandemic, and how we can help them remotely. Before we jump into that discussion, just a reminder to follow us on Twitter at NHSchools, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube video or YouTube channel. That is probably one of the most beneficial things you can do for resources these days. All of our afternoon bell sessions are streaming live on YouTube, and they're all cataloged there for your reference. And there's been some really powerful afternoon speakers, so I encourage you to check those out. We'll be back here today at 3 p.m. With Stephanie Arroyo from the Know and Tell program, which is about how to report suspected child abuse or neglect. So it's a super important topic during these times when children aren't going to school and it's harder to know what's going on. So as I mentioned, our session today is talking about how to help families that are experiencing a little more vulnerability during this pandemic. Before we jump in, I did want to talk about what we mean by vulnerable. Vulnerable can almost feel like an icky word for a lot of us. No one wants to feel vulnerable. It's not a comfortable human state. And so my hope is that we can reframe it and see it not as a state of disempowerment, but as something that's universally human. We are all inherently vulnerable. This pandemic has really brought that to light for all of us. We're being faced with our own mortality, really, as a very scary pandemic sweeps the nation. A simple definition from the dictionary of vulnerability is to be in extra need of care, support, or protection. So if we think about it, really all humans are in need of care, support, and protection. So when we're talking about being vulnerable, it's not something unique to only a subset of people. It's really all of us. So because it's built into our DNA to sort of say, we're not vulnerable, I'm not vulnerable, I can survive this, I can take this head on, rather than thinking about providing resources and helping out during this time as a way to address vulnerability, we can maybe reframe it as thinking about it as solidarity with our community. It's a way to maintain strong ties and connections, and really a sign of a healthy community is one that lifts everybody up. So we hope these sessions will be as interactive as possible. I've posted the question in the comments box for you. How has your school or district shown solidarity and or supported those who have higher needs during remote learning? In this talk, I'm going to talk about 6 potential circumstances that could make a family or student a little more vulnerable, and some resources to help these cases. But if you have other ideas, we really would love to hear from you and put them in the comments. After the session is done going live, I will post links to everything that I've talked about in the comments box, so you can come back and find those. My guess is you probably know some of these or a lot of these already, but it's always good to have a reminder of what we can be providing for students and families. So I've heard people talk about loss of income and the need to prioritize, where is this money going? How do I know what to spend it on? And I heard someone recently say focusing on housing first, and then everything else will kind of fall into place. So I'm starting with folks who might be experiencing some worry around housing and with what loss of income means for stability. We know we service homeless students, and so hopefully your school and district has some supports in place for helping homeless students and homeless families in your community. When we are thinking about it as it pertains to this particular crisis, During the governor's state of emergency and stay-at-home order, it's actually been prohibited to start the eviction process. So there is a little bit of wiggle room there. Another thing that schools can do is to offer publicly available resources on these eviction stays, like the one that Governor Sununu issued for the state of New Hampshire. Maybe offer resources on financial planning. And then one of the threads that you'll see throughout this talk is really making it easy for families to communicate certain issues that they might be having coming up. One idea would be to have a Google form that goes out to families, and if they're in need of some sort of assistance, and it could be sort of a wide net that's being cast by this form or survey, it could be relatively anonymous, other than the fact that you might know, what family it pertains to. But having a way for families to communicate that they're experiencing some sort of housing insecurity could be really helpful. This is especially in light of the fact that students aren't going to school anymore, so the home has really become the school, and so it's even more important than it was before. It's a very close second to housing is food security. So a lot of school districts have been doing a fantastic job delivering meals through the school buses or dropping them off, and there are many places that are offering food assistance to families in need. That said, because many more people are requesting this food service, a lot of these places are pretty overloaded. But offering resources that are readily available to families in an easy to access way would be great. The New Hampshire Food Bank has a list of all local food banks on it. You could provide a link to that, and I'll provide a link after I'm done going live here. And again, you could use that idea of like a Google form or some sort of survey to indicate if there's a family that needs meals. People really want to help, especially people who haven't had a loss of income right now. So it really serves a dual purpose if you're able to sort of blend and braid is a term we use often for funding streams, but it's also with resources right now for people who have had a loss of income to be able to provide them something, and from donated resources from other places is a really unique way. And again, it could be as anonymous as possible, or as makes sense for your community. Number 3 is physical safety. Again, with students not going to school, not knowing what they're experiencing at home, and how to keep them safe is a big concern. We've had a number of afternoon bell sessions on YouTube that have gone over some really important topics as it pertains to physical safety. So we Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence present. I will link that video, but again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also had NAMI New Hampshire present on the Connect Suicide Program. And there's also today and for the next couple of days, No One Tells Stephanie Arroyo will be talking about mandating reporting for suspected child abuse and neglect. Those 3 are really excellent resources, and again, opening those communication channels and providing that information to families and teachers so that they can pick up on it. Number 4 is one that's really out of the control of schools and really, honestly, everyone, as our entire economy has grinded to a halt, but it's employment. So we know that millions and millions of people have lost jobs, and there's a lot of folks who are really strained right now. The biggest thing with job loss, or one of the big things, is that folks can feel really isolated, and then it can lead to depression. And right now we are already in a state of mandated isolation. And so the risk of depression that comes from feeling powerless over losing one's job is going to be pretty great. So one thing that schools can do is really just connecting with families and letting them know that they're there. Some districts I know have established a type of caring circles where they have different families who are checking in with other families so that there's a way to stay connected and stay as a community. Another thing that schools might think to do, it could be kind of creative, is to offer a sort of workforce development webinar. It could be for anyone who wants to review their resume or think about job prospects. Again, with the entire economy sort of slowed here, it's sort of a downtime, but that would be a positive way to put it to use. And then, of course, we do have NH Employment Security, where folks can apply for unemployment. Number 5 is English language learners. So this is a population that remote learning has hit particularly hard because teachers scrambled so hard to get a remote learning curriculum up and running. There has not been a lot of time to translate and to really connect with those families where English is a second language. There are a couple of resources out there, and I know our team is going to be working to provide an afternoon bell session pretty soon about how to make sure that folks who don't have English as a first language are supported. One resource I've come across is called Talking Points. It's an app, and normally it's a paid app. Right now, during the COVID pandemic, they're offering it for free. You want to make sure you don't get roped into a paid subscription, but for now it's free. And it's an app that helps educators send text messages and communications to students in the family's home language. So in the same way that Remind works, Talking Points would be like a Remind that can do a translation also. And then I will also post from Colleran, Colorado. They have provided some coronavirus multilingual resources for schools. All right, the last group I'm going to talk about, or sort of vulnerability I'm going to talk about, is mental health. That's near and dear to our hearts, and you will find a lot of resources about mental health on our different platforms. One of the biggest tips for schools is educating families and students and teachers about knowing the 5 signs of when someone might be experiencing a mental health illness or crisis. We have printed and are ready to distribute our little Know the 5 Signs placards along with healthy habits. You can order those from our website, nhlearnsremotely.com, and we can deliver them and have them go out in the bag lunches that students are receiving, so that every family gets a Know the 5 Signs little card with the resources and the phone numbers to call on them. So training teachers up, training school staff up on being able to recognize when someone is not feeling like themselves, if they're agitated, withdrawn, not practicing self-care, or are feeling hopeless, and making sure that they know the correct channels to then get that person help. Of course, if there's ever a mental health or psychiatric crisis that's actually happening, you can always call 911. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is pretty easy to remember at 1-800-273-TALK. You can go to the emergency room or the hospital, or you can contact your local community mental health center. So those are just a few ideas, but we do encourage you to order the Healthy Habits, Know the 5 Signs handouts for families. That would be one thing that you could do. So clearly this is not an exhaustive list of vulnerabilities that are facing families and students in New Hampshire. I would really, really love to hear what your school or district is doing to help families who are experiencing higher need right now. I hope that these tips will be useful. I hope that we remember that we are all vulnerable in this time, and that we're all experiencing a higher level of vulnerability than normal. And so to really detach that that difficulty or that shame we sometimes have when we have to ask for help. It's very hard for us to ask for help. That's all I have for you today. We would love for you to tune in this afternoon at 3 p.m. on YouTube. Our channel is NH Student Wellness, and we will be talking with Stephanie Arroyo about the Know and Tell program. So we hope to hear you, see you there, and hope to hear from you soon. Bye.